With PBSS, or Positive Behavior Support System, there's an important method of addressing severe or ongoing misbehavior. It's a research-based, reliable concept that makes a lot of sense intuitively. It's about addressing the function of the behavior. When a student acts out, their behavior serves a function. So let's say that a student isn't acting any differently based on the ABC intervention step, and he needs something more intense to stay accountable. During the meeting, which we began to discuss at the end of Module 6, we mentioned the daily report card. This method was created to help students with ADHD to stay on track. Make sure to plot the values over the weeks, the months. That way everyone can visually see the student's progression. The behavior goal, which is how the student should be acting, needs to be identified by the student. You and the teacher can help the student to identify what they need to do. For example, if you're doing this chart for a student with ADHD, the goal might be to participate properly in class. Then actions are going to be listed. The student needs to identify specific actions that are going to show he's meeting his goal. Examples can be, I raised my hand quietly and waited for a response. I got my materials out in a timely manner. I remained in my own seat, and I completed work and turned it in. This defines exactly what your expectation looks like. It also shows the student that there are many things he can do to be successful. Also note that the actions are all framed in the positive, instructing the student on what to do as opposed to what not to do. If you're telling a student what not to do, they don't necessarily know what they need to do. Each action should be ranked by points. 2 points for a great job, 1 point for an imperfect job, and 0 points if they didn't follow the action. After you rate each behavior, add up the points. So for example, with 4 actions, the total possible would be 8 points. Then I employ the following methods to reinforce good behavior. Definitely keep track of this data for you, and the teacher should also keep track for him or herself. Set up a goal. So if the student has 2 weeks of getting at least 70 out of 80 points, or whatever you consider to be the cutoff, the student can be mainstreamed, which we will discuss momentarily. Make sure not to make the goal too low for students. They really do need to behave, or they really do need to be on the chart. If the student doesn't make the grade for the second time, you can restart the 10 days again so they don't feel like they lost the opportunity for future days. For younger students, when they complete the 2 weeks, they get a positive behavior note, while older students may get a comment, praise, or recognition. So often, charts do not work. They tell the student what we already know, what they already did, and they don't inform future behavior. And that's why charts have such a bad rap. But instead of using the charts as summative tests, where you're merely ranking the student, instead use this chart as a formative assessment, which will inform students on which behaviors need to improve. The main message a student who scores poorly will get is one of encouragement, stating that the student has the chance to start anew and beat his old score tomorrow. If the student gets an 8 or a 7, it will count towards the points needed in order to be off of this intervention. You may have noticed that this intervention doesn't offer a specific positive reward other than success and excellence. And that is because, along with the extrinsic rewards not really working so well, we've already devoted 5 modules to discuss how to make your school a super awesome place where students want to be. The student should want that as the reward. I don't need this hindrance. I don't need this chart. I just want to enjoy class again. Also, the chart being annoying for them is a natural consequence. If a student scores 5 or 6, nothing happens to them other than the student losing the points. If a student scores 4 or lower, the chart needs to be signed by a parent. And if the student forgets to get it signed by a parent, it needs to be signed by you or the counselor before he comes back to class. Here's where it really makes a difference. Do not allow the child to go back into class without a signed note. If there was no parent signature, the student cannot be permitted back in. If the student decides to cut, naturally, there will be a consequence for that. If the child says they lost the note, they're going to need to come to you again and get a note from the teacher, get it signed again so that they can come into class the next day. These points on the graph should be averaged into the student's overall academic grade.